Hello guys, and thank you for watching. I have built and tested a lot of gaming rigs over the years and wanted to share the process I go through to make sure the used parts I built with are performing at 100%. So if you're building your first PC or want to build your first PC from used parts, I hope I have some free tips and maybe some warnings for you. This is a semi-budget PC with the parts suitable for gaming in 1080 and 1440p for all titles up until summer 2016. And the parts I ended up with is being presented at the moment. Motherboard was an Asus Crosshair, CPU was the FX 8350, and right now we're being watched the graphics card. Of course the GPU is the muscle in this system and what makes it a gaming rig. You should also note that the PSU was an Corsair AX850. This might not be a budget grade, but PSU is the one thing that mainly breaks down, so don't cheap out here. We have 16 GB of DDR3 memory. With 1866 Hz, a brand new Kingston SSD. SSDs degrade over time, so maybe not the smartest to buy used. And a storage drive of 1 TB. For full effects, we have 2 meters of LED kit. As you're gonna see later, the case is with a big window, so the light will give some effect. Some good thermal paste, a common DVD drive, and a Windows license, of course, with a disk. You can buy it as a package or burn the disk yourself. The tower was still in its box at this point, but you will see more of it later. Here you can see a complete list of parts for the PC. Remember that this is early 2016 prices. They will go down as more and more 1070 and 1080 hit the market. And later in the year, AMD will also bring out new cards. The CPU was already mounted when I bought the bundle. But if you have to mount the CPU yourself, remember to look for the little triangle on both parts so you align them correctly. I am right now cleaning the CPU with isopropyl rubbing alcohol. Use some rubbing alcohol with a high percentage, and use a material you know does not break up or fray easily. Keep on going until the cloth is clean still after rubbing. When applying thermal paste a large CPU die like this, I use the X method. How you spread it is not so important, it's more the amount that needs to be correct. The pressure from the cooler itself will spread the material out. Make sure that the cooler is on evenly before applying pressure, and when fastening to the motherboard, mount the screws diagonally. This can take quite some time, and I'm gonna fast forward it for you guys, so you don't have to see me use like 5 minutes to do this. When I'm installing Intel CPUs, I don't use the X method because it's a smaller die, so I use the dot method, where there is only a single bit in the center of the CPU. Right now I'm finishing putting on the cooler itself and getting ready to put on the fans. The cooling fans is easy to put on this cooler because it's part of the design, but remember to look for the orientation when you install other coolers. Most coolers is the same in both sides, so you would have to look for the small errors to know what orientation it is. Notice that I put in the RAM already. You'll see the installation in a moment, but I had to test that there is room for them. There is nothing worse than putting in a CPU cooler and have to take it off again because the RAM is too high profile. There is no tricky bits in this. It's just getting the fans mounted. And you will not know if you put on too much thermal paste or too little until you get the system fired up. And I'm going to fast forward again so you don't have to see me do this on the other side. Now we put the two fans together and connect the fans to the motherboard. There will always be a port on the motherboard labeled CPU fan, and it will always be a 4-pin. So locate the port and gently put on the 4-pin connection from the fans. This is taking me some time because I want to tuck away some of the excess cable, making it a clean look. The final result will look somewhat better if you take a few minutes out of every cable management to do this. And there we go. We are now ready to proceed and to connect other parts to the main board and get the computer up and running. Remember to look at the specs for the motherboard. This board uses DDR3, but newer boards will require DDR4 memory. Installing is easy, just look for the notches in the bottom. They need to match the orientation on the motherboard, and apply a good amount of pressure for the hinges to lock in. To start off with, we need SATA cables and extra peripherals as a mouse, keyboard, power, internet, monitor and sound. To avoid bad settings from previous owners, like UEFI settings or overclocks, I always start with clearing the CMOS. It can be tricky to get the battery out, but do not use force. Use the clip on the right side. Leave the battery out for a few minutes and put it back in. To avoid static electricity, place your hand on the PSU while it's plugged in and grounded, or touch your wall heater. It does not show in the video, but I do this often and always before direct contact with the motherboard. Before assembling in the case, I'll always do the initial tests on a test bench. You don't need a fancy mounting rack as a test bench. Here I just use a motherboard card box. This is to limit waste of time. It's easier to hear if fans is about to fail or replace bad parts without going through dismounting. Mounting the speaker will allow you to locate boot errors faster. This is handy if you run into problems. Some motherboards need a BIOS update to boot with newer graphic cards. Have this in mind if you run into problems. I connect the 8-pin power and the 6-pin power. If you forget this, the card will not boot. When installing the GPU, listen for the click from the lock to make sure that the pins is all the way down. Most people will not need a DVD drive today, but I use mine for boot disks, for Windows and memtest, and when I need to delete partitions. If you do not have a DVD drive, you can use USB flash drives for boot images instead. The first power on is always thrilling. Listen for the single beep. This normally means success and the system will make a full boot. Make sure all fans are spinning, but take notice that some PSUs and GPUs may have zero fan features. If the clear CMOS was successful, the system will require you to get into BIOS. Look at the CPU temperature to make sure that the cooler does not need a reseat as soon as you get in. The CPU idle temperature vary after model of CPU and cooler. Do a Google search if you are in doubt to see if what you're getting is in line with others. 34 degrees is pretty normal for this CPU. If you go to cpubuzz.com, you can look up what max CPU temperature for your model should be. For this CPU it's 60 degrees. Look for the BIOS version and RAM detection. Now we're going into the EasyFlash 2 utility. I've downloaded the newest version to a USB drive, and we're gonna start a flash. This eliminates the stability issues that might have been in earlier updates and improve CPU, RAM and GPU capability. Click OK. It wants you to make sure that you're 100% sure you want to do this. So click OK again and the process will start. Updating the BIOS is a critical system change. Make sure you're not doing anything else to the PC when it's updating. If you power off or turn off the PC in other ways, disconnect the power, you can break the motherboard. Even after it says successful, it will restart and you will need to wait for it to update again. On the load screen now you can see the BIOS revision is now 22.01. This means success and you can go into BIOS again. In the BIOS now we check if the current memory frequency is as high as it should be. For Intel model you will need to enable XMP, but this AMD motherboard already found our higher DDR3 megahertz and adjusted it to 1866. It's running at 4.0 gigahertz, and we will not need to update this. There's a lot of settings on this overclocking motherboard, and we will not touch any of them in this video. What we will touch though is the settings for SATA, as we are coming to at the moment. Cool and quiet will leave disabled, as we will use the PWM options instead a little later. Going into SATA configuration, we will make sure that the SATA is running AHCI mode. This means that it's able to send trim commands to the SSD, meaning more lifespan for the SSD with cleanup commands. We see that it's picking up our DVD drive as the only thing we've connected at the moment. Right now I'm just going around in BIOS checking that everything is that as I want it to be. You can do all kinds of things on a OC grade motherboard like this. LED control I'll just leave on, why not have the fancy logo flashing red. Going into the monitor fan control, we need to make sure that the QFan control is enabled. We ignore the low speed limit and we select PWM and we want it to be silent. Later we'll do a stress test and this shows if we need to put some more power on the fan again. Saving an OC profile will make it easier for you to return the system to a state where you know it's working. So if you're playing around with overclocks and other settings, always do a standard OC profile. Let's save the settings and move on. Outside the picture I've put in a boot drive with memtest86. It's starting up at the moment and is a form of stress test on the RAM. It will make sure that the memory in your system does not contain errors. And it's booting up right now. It shows you what kind of CPU you have, it shows you how much RAM, what the temperature on your CPU is, and it's showing you the progress and test is running at the moment. It can take a long time if you want to do all the passes. Note that right now it's taking 12 hours and 16 minutes and it's actually not fully done. I normally do only 1 out of 4 passes, but I left this overnight. It's showing 0 errors and that's the important part. Now we are ready to connect the SSD. I always have as little devices connected to the motherboard as possible. This makes it easier to locate possible errors. I have burned an ISO with multiple versions of Windows 7 onto a DVD that we're going to boot up from right now. This ISO suits a lot of different versions. The key I'm activating with is from eBay and is an OEM key that only will activate once. Make sure that you get the correct ISO that suits the key you buy. Take note that the free upgrade to Windows 10 have ended and you should now get a key for Windows 10 directly. This is an older key and we will get warnings that it's not legit. This is not the case, but we will need to activate it by phone or with cmd commands. There is of course a lot of waiting time involved in installing Windows 7. I have tried to edit as much of it out as possible. Here we go back in time a bit to show where to find the BIOS update file. Find the correct model on the manufacturer's homepage. Check the name twice to make sure that you're on the right page. Go onto the options and find the drivers page. Download the latest version of the BIOS file and unzip it onto a USB drive. We'll also take the LAN install file, so we're going to make sure that our Windows 7 can find internet. If BIOS does not find the USB drive when you're updating BIOS, make sure that it's formatted to FAT32. Windows 7 does not have the internet LAN drivers installed beforehand, so you'll need to install drivers for the internet port to work. If you're installing Windows 10, they will probably have them pre-activated from the manufacturers. When activating Windows 7, make sure you have the internet connection up and running. Maybe test it in Internet Explorer or another browser. Go into the computer settings. Here you can see if your version of Windows support the amount of memory you have installed. Click on Activate Windows Now and select Automatic Phone System. Select your country and follow directions. This will be the same process if you install an OEM key of Windows 10 directly. Note that the upgrade to Windows 10 is not working anymore. Sadly, you cannot use the free upgrade anymore from the 31st of June 2016. Only if the Windows 7 key has previously been upgraded to Windows 10 on the same motherboard. Windows Media Tools can be downloaded from Microsoft.com. When the upgrade is complete, make sure the key is activated in Windows options before moving on to a clean install. You can use the boot overrides to make sure the system boots from the Windows 10 boot disk and not from the SSD. It is not a mistake that I showed the full key. It's an upgrade key and is the same for all Windows 10 Pro upgrade installs. It will not activate if you did not previously upgrade to Windows 10 successfully. Now we are on a clean install of Windows 10 and is ready to configure it for use. First off is making sure Windows 10 is up to date. You can find the menu easily by entering the Windows menu and type update. Next up is making sure that the 3.5mm audio jack is working correctly. Test all the USB ports on the back with the flash drive. If one of them is not working, it is not a major deal, but you would still like to know. Now go into power options. How you want the power options is of course a matter of taste. I recommend setting it to high performance and disabling fast boot for optimal performance and reliability. Ninite is a program that makes it possible to install multiple programs in the same exe installer. Available drivers and add-on is again found on the manufacturer's website for the specific motherboard model. Windows 10 normally contains most of the needed drivers already, but I'd like to refresh the audio driver. The AI suite from Asus contains a lot of good features, including Fan Expert that makes it possible to override what rotation speed you want and thereof the noise produced by fans. You can pick up the CPU-C from here as well as an AOG version, or go to their website for the newest overall version. Asus boot settings makes it possible for you to, from an exe installer, to click one button for it to go into BIOS directly. It's handy when you're overclocking. For Intel setups, you can pick up the latest chipset driver over at guru3d.com. For GeForce GPUs, you'll need to go to nvidia.com to catch the latest driver. Here we go to the official AMD support site for the newest graphic card driver. Now we're installing the graphic cards driver. The AMD Gaming Evolved app normally produces more issues than solutions. Leave it off unless it contains features you really need. I always accept the reboot request after every critical driver install. Windows contains a hidden feature that parks extra cores to save power. You can use this utility to unpack the cores, which has proven to give a little extra performance in some games and applications. To make sure the CPU is performing as expected, I use Cinebench R15. I have a lot of tests to compare to, but most people would need to go online to compare. As shown, this 8-core AMD does not reach even close to the same performance as newer Intel i7, but is still attractive because of the lower price. It has a score very close to an earlier test with an overclocked FX 8320. This setup could achieve a good overclock, but I have left it out of this video because it is very time consuming, especially if you want a high and stable overclock. You will need a large amount of stress tests. Hardware monitor makes it possible to see a live data feed from the system's temperature, voltage and clock speeds. AIDA 64 is the first of 2 stress tests I run to make sure the system is stable. When starting the stress test, the temperature will rise, but will within 15 minutes find its maximum. I normally let the AIDA 64 test go on for about half an hour. The test is now complete, and as shown by the bottom yellow bar, the CPU was at a maximum capacity and the temperature was rising to 44 degrees. Firmac is used to stress test the graphics card to 100% usage. Take note that this can damage some cards and will expose weaknesses. When undergoing the test, look for artifacts in temperature and stop the test if any problems are found. Temperature for all cards should not go above 100 degrees. The R9 290 with a stock cooler is one of the hottest cards on the market and has a maximum temperature of 105. Normal games will not stress the card as much as Firmac. A score of 4609 is pretty normal. Take a look at the comparative charts on Guru 3D to see if you fall behind on your score. The second stress test of the system is done with RealBench with a 4-hour duration. It's normal for RealBench to show errors even if AIDA 64 did not provoke any. After 4 hours the temperature did not go above 44 degrees, which is far below the max temperature for the CPU, leaving adequate room for an overclock if you wanted to. Now we pick up the 1TB storage drive. We connect the 3.5 inch drive while the system is powered off. To make sure the SSD and storage drive is working and in good condition, I use Crystal Disk Info. This shows health status, power on count and total power on hours. It also shows if you are connected the drive to a SATA port with the correct SATA transfer speed. Click on Run and enter disk mgmt.msc. This will enable you to delete partitions, create new ones, and format the new disk so it's ready for use. What name and drive letter you pick for the new drive does not matter. The system will not let you pick a drive letter that is already in use, so you don't have to think about this. At this point you should already know if there is any problems with the PC's hardware or performance. But to make sure, I always test 1 or 2 games to make sure there is no software issues as well. Make sure to edit settings into the highest quality. Here we have a quick play of The Division, and the system is showing pretty stable FPS and overall good performance. Counter-Strike runs just great, but you will not see crazy amounts of FPS on this CPU. If you want to compare your system to others, or if you are still in doubt if the system is running as it should, you can pick up 3DMark Demo from Steam Store. When the test is over, you can use the database to see if you score lower than most of the tested systems. I used the full license, enabling me to see detailed scores and temperatures for each test. The total score of 8060 is about the same result you would get if you compared it to an i5 with a GTX 780. As you can see in the columns, our system is scoring just right, as most of systems do. There is a second large group as well, and I believe that they come from overclocked systems. So if you overclock, we could achieve 9000 and more. If you are experiencing smaller problems with stability, you can check the system logs for entries. Note that not all logs should be taken as critical warnings, and the logs shown in the list here I see on all Windows 10 systems, even though those marked with a red exclamation mark. There has been no problems with our parts so far. Every test has been going well, and we see no problems. All the parts are ready and on the table. Here is the case you didn't see before. It's a full tower and is quite ready to take on all these parts. I installed PSU first, so the cables are ready for the motherboard. This one is easy though, because all the cables are modular. Next up, the I/O shield is installed before the motherboard is put in. If you forget this and install the motherboard first, you will have a hard time getting it into place. Make sure the motherboard standoffs are in the right places for the ATX type board size. Be careful when inserting the motherboard, you don't want to scratch the back. Align the motherboard with the I/O shield so every USB port and other ports stick through correctly. The magnetic screwdriver will not damage the board when you are fastening the screws. We are now putting in the SATA cables. It should not matter what cable goes to what drive, because as long as they are 6 GB in speed, it should be the same. If it does not boot correctly, we can edit this in BIOS later. I also put the USB 3.0 connector from the case in the board. Almost like the SATA port, it needs to click into place. This is the front audio that's being connected. Remember to look at the pin placement. You cannot do this wrong if you look at the pin placement. The USB 2 pins is not the same as the front audio. Now we're plugging in the USB 2 port and the SD card reader. The speaker is optional at this point. When we know the computer is working correctly, it brings no value, but always store it for later use. Power button, reset switch and LED indicators is connected. The storage drive and SSD is mounted into the hard drive cage in the back of the case. The cables are plugged into the PSU. They are clearly marked, so it's almost impossible to make mistakes. The LED controller is installed. It needs power from a Molex connector. The 2-meter LED strip is fastened with the included clips. The GPU is installed. In a full tower case like this, cables from the PSU might feel short. To make sure we did not break anything while assembling in the case, we fire it up again. As you may be able to hear, the case fans are loud, so they will need to be replaced. We test the new front audio port to see if it's working correctly. And all of the front USB ports to make sure we didn't forget a cable from the case to the motherboard. And last, we make sure that both drives still show up correctly. For better responsiveness and noise reduction, the 3-pin 140mm fans is changed to 120mm 4-pin PWM fans. This case is very good for cable management, and the space behind the motherboard is good, but a few cables needs to be bent in and fastened to the case. Normally most of the space for the leftover cable is found in the drive cages. Make sure not to unplug anything while pulling the cables down. Put on all the case panels and we're pretty much ready to go. And here we have the final result. I believe most members of the PC Master Race would be happy with a gaming rig like this. All the parts are high quality, and this shows by not having a single hiccup in the test or assembly. And if you're on a budget, this will allow you to play the newest game in high quality a few years to come. The R9 290 has even proved to be a good choice for DirectX 12 gaming. This was my first recording, edit and voiceover. I hope it was not too bad. You're welcome to leave constructive feedback and tips in the comments. If this was any help or informative for you, please leave a like or even subscribe. Thanks for watching and goodbye for now.